Yeah, hi there everybody. It's still Thursday afternoon, just after 3:30 it is now. And having seen what the rightists have to say about the Irish situation at the moment, I thought I'd go and have a look at what the lefties have to say. And I went onto a site called the World Socialist website. Very interesting article. These fellas don't mess around now, so you know what the story is. They don't tip their hats to anybody. Anyway, I'll read it I'll try and be as quick as I can. It says, Irish government prepares more spending cuts. This is by a fellow called Jordan Shilton. I don't know who he is, but anyway, he seems to know what he's talking about. It says, and this is mostly about the Colin McCarthy's report, the Onboard Smith report. Having imposed major cuts in public spending and 2 emergency budgets over the last year, the Irish government is preparing to implement yet another round. It is expected that the additional measures will be announced as soon as September, in spite of the fact that the budget for 2010 is not due until December. A recent report published by an official commission headed by an economist, Colin McCarthy, provides an indication of the extent of the cutbacks. Mr McCarthy proposed measures which would see annual government spending shrink by over €5 billion. In comments after the report's publication, Mr McCarthy noted that the government was borrowing over €400 million per week. This amounted to 20 billion per year, €20 billion per year, and was equivalent to approximately 11% of the total GDP of Ireland. This was unsustainable, Mr McCarthy said, warning that the government would struggle to obtain further loans if swift action was not taken. The main target for spending cuts in the report are social welfare, health and education. The Commission also called for 17,000 job cuts in the public sector. In total, the Commission proposed social welfare cuts of €1.5 billion. This will be done by cutting welfare payments by 5%, saving the government €850 million. Child benefits will be cut by 20%, saving the government over €500 million. The department has also been encouraged to pay job seekers allowance at lower levels depending on the age of the claimant, as well as making cuts to support services for families. Under the Commission's plan, the Department of Health will be reduced by up to 10% in the coming years through the implementation of a €1.2 billion spending cuts and the loss of 6,000 jobs. Those in low incomes will suffer the most, with plans to raise hospital fees, implement a €5 prescription charge, and lower the income level for access to medical cards. Many people on low incomes currently entitled to basic welfare through the medical card scheme will have to do without. Education will also bear the brunt of job cuts, with Mr McCarthy proposing 6,300 redundancies and €700 million in savings. Small schools, particularly in rural areas, will be closed or merged with other schools, while provisions for students with special needs will be scaled back. Local authorities are also targeted, with plans for €100 million in budget cuts for councils. 12 of Ireland's 34 local authorities should be merged, according to the report. Many local authorities are already confronting budgetary difficulties as the economy deteriorates. Other significant cuts are recommended for the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, mainly through reductions in funding for science projects and cuts to benefits given to the unemployed to retrain for work. The report recommends over 1,000 job cuts in the Department of Agriculture while reducing its budget by €300 million. The Justice Department faces cuts of nearly €150 million, including the slashing of allowances paid to police officers and other staff. Transport cuts will impact on road maintenance, regional air travel and schemes to improve transport in rural areas. Artistic and cultural facilities will face additional funding cuts of over €100 million and the elimination of 170 jobs. Earlier this year in the budget, funding for the arts was scaled back substantially. Taken as a whole, the proposals will save the government €5.3 billion. Although he has backed away from implementing all of the recommendations for fear of public opposition, the Taoiseach Brian Cowan made clear that all of the measures would be considered. No area of spending would be immune from examination, he said. Cowan and the other government officials want to avoid tax rises on the rich at all costs. Finance Minister Brian Lenihan, who estimated in his April budget that spending cuts of $1.5 billion would be made in 2010, has now increased his target. According to the Sunday Business Post, Lenihan is now aiming for cutbacks of $2.5 billion next year, so that he can avoid announcing tax hikes. Any suggestion that the rich should pay for the current economic crisis has been rejected out of hand. Opposition parties and trade union movement, while criticising the extent of the proposed cuts, have essentially accepted the premise that substantial cuts will have to be made. Peter McLoone of the Impact Trade Union said McCarthy's report should be used as one of the many aids to tackle financial crisis. Fine Gael, the main opposition party, criticised the government for having lost the moral authority to implement the necessary reforms. It has refused to be drawn on which cuts it would make if it were in power, but its leader, Enda Kenny, has made it clear that he backs many of the McCarthy recommendations. While the governing Fianna Fáil Green Party coalition, within the governing coalition, there are growing fears of social opposition emerging to the cuts. Fianna Fáil made heavy losses in local elections last month, and many TDs fear their seats at the next election. The Greens have campaigned extensively in recent years on education and local government issues. There are concerns as to how the party will reconcile this with the scale of cutbacks now being proposed. Concerns of the ruling parties are of a tactical character. There is general agreement that reduction in public spending are the only way to get the state out of its current financial crisis. The state has been quick to make billions available to the banks and the financial elite with no strings attached to save them from their speculative practices. Last year, the Irish government was the first in Europe to take action to guarantee bank deposits, providing assurances which were worth €400 billion. Anglo-Irish Bank, which got into trouble earlier last year, received $4 billion in government funds, and in December last year a package totaling over $5 billion was put together to prevent the collapse of the other major banks, even as reports emerged exposing the fraudulent methods employed to conceal the extent of their losses. It is to pay for this bailout of the financial elite that the government is calling upon workers and the poor to accept billions in cuts in social welfare and other critical services. It just goes on a little bit, but you can see where they're coming from, and it's just interesting to get the Financial Times, then we get the left wing aspect. Very interesting. We'll talk later. Thank you. Bye.